Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. Woke up a bit late because I didn't sleep very well, but here we are. We have the skill preview for the new incoming Maribel that was announced last night. And this entire meta as a whole is an easy skip. Like, this is not a necessary meta to pull for, especially coming off the third anniversary. And after looking at this kit, it's really nailed home that probably can skip it too. So let's just take a look. So we've got Maribel. Let's open this in a new tab so it's more easy to see. So she is, as we saw last night, water. She is an AoE alt water physical for 150% because support alts are terrible. She gives extra weakness strike to festive memories, which can go up to 60% if you have her fully duped out and fully invested with the uh, with the orange rocks, which no one should do that. She's on Festive Memories, Schemer, Stern of Spirit. Schemer doesn't have a team. Stern of Spirit is the Overlord team, which is magic and green. Sure, I guess you could bring her. But her first skill, 90 points. Increases EX Soul of Combos damage by 120%. EX alt damage. So this, in case you're unaware, is a different buff than a normal alt damage buff, because it only applies to EX alts, which you would think would make them more powerful. And I've got some gameplay footage for you to show that off, that we'll look at a little bit. But first off, this only applies to EX alts. Like, if it's a normal alt, you're not getting it, because it's only EX alts. So if you've been nuking with Fire Velzard and Christmas Shizu, old 5-star characters, and you're like, okay, well, Maribel will help them. She will not, because they are not EX alt characters. They have no way to get an EX alt as of right now. So using this buff for Fire Velzard, who already has a 40 or 100, if she's skill fused, percent alt buff damage, this isn't going to do anything for them. This won't do anything for Space Hero, for Space Millum, for Dark First Anniversary Millum. No normal 5-star character will benefit off of this alt buff. It will only apply to EX characters and beyond, EX Unbounds, and it will only apply to them if they actually have an EX alt. So that's the first thing. The second part of her skill removes all barrier stacks from all allies with at least one stack or more removed from each to activate. Okay, so this is now deleting your own barriers to give you a weakness strike buff for all allies, including the rear guard, by 50% for one turn, and every time you remove a barrier, you get 10% more, up to a cap of 150% weakness strike. So it starts at 50 when you remove one barrier, at least one barrier. And if you remove 10 barriers in a turn, you can get 150% weakness strike. Now this applies to everybody, which is good, and it will yoink all the barriers, including the rear guard. Okay. Well, actually, no. It'll give the weakness strike to everyone, including the rear guard. I don't know if it's going to yoink the barriers from the rear guard or just the front line, because it doesn't specify that. It just says all allies. But normally, all allies, including rear guard. So I assume this is just the front line. So you're intentionally removing your defensive capability to give yourself a lot of weakness strike, which I guess you could do in like your last stand kind of thing. Like, you're ready to nuke and you're confident you can kill, then I don't care about defense because we're gonna nuke her. Like, yeah, that makes sense. But also, this only works when you have barriers, right? If you're not running Albus or Ritus, then you have no barriers to begin with. So what, like, this now becomes nothing. Like, you might as well it's just half a skill. Her second skill, maybe. But first, let's talk about the EX alt damage. Okay, so we're in Predator battle. We have an EX alt for Space Jean. Jean having her own EX alt damage buff, but it also does have space resistance down, so we do have to keep that in mind. So it's not going to be a full one-to-one comparison, because Shuna has 70% alt damage, but water resistance, and obviously Jean is not water. So we're going to do as close a comparison as we can, while still being relatively close to what I'm trying to prove. So the EX alt buff for Jean versus the normal alt buff from Shuna. Let's compare how much damage. So first off, we're going to use the normal alt buff, and then we'll go ahead and send this, and then we'll come back and we'll do an EX alt buff with Jean. And this normal buff from Shuna does 99,000 damage. Alright, good to know. Okay, so now we're back. We have an EX alt, so now we can use Jean's skill. Remember that this is going to be a little bit skewed because it is still 70% like Shuna, but we do have that 50% space resistance down. There's not really a way for me to get around that because they both last for one turn. It's not like I could hold the alt damage buff. So now let's compare the damage between a normal EX alt with the 70% alt buff from Shuna versus a 70% EX alt buff with a little bit of variance. So let's go ahead and activate this and then go ahead and send it. Activate, and she does 101,000 damage. Okay, so the first one, 99k. Second one, 101. A little bit higher because of the space resistance down, and there's nothing we can really do about that. So now we're back for a third time. Let's use both of them together. So 70% normal, 70% EX, plus the 50% space resistance down. And let's see what happens to our damage output now. And we get 135. Ooh. Yeah, it's not as impactful as you would like it to be. Alright, so the benefit from having an EX alt buff is that it will stack on top of a normal alt buff. So if you have the power to do that, just like what Commander team was doing, where Hinata gave you 120% alt damage and then Shizu gave you another 70% EX alt damage, like that worked. You can combine their powers, but as you can see, if you're just doing that by itself and just doing alt and then EX alt, it doesn't give you as much of a raise as you think, because I'm sure people were thinking that that would have been just the 99,000 and the 100,000 combined, and math would work in great ways and it'd be 200k. It's not. It's not. You need to add more buffs to this to make it really, really, really super duper powerful. But it does allow you to stack a different buff on top of alt damage where you don't get diminishing returns, even though it's kind of diminished anyways. So that's what they're doing with this skill. You're getting a lot of alt damage from the Protector Albus already, and then you're just going to add a little bit more on top of it. And this is why I'm not super duper impressed with Maribel, because we have so much alt damage coming in, and then if you're running like Fire Velzard, one, the skill doesn't affect her, and two, she's got her own personal alt buff, which would stack on top of the permanent alt buff, which would, it's just kind of just wonky. So Maribel, we talked about that. We talked about her weakness strike, where if you're not on a barrier team, it's not going to really matter. The second skill, having its cost revealed, is interesting. Normally they don't do that. Normally 25 points is around what people would see for one in alt swap skill. So like Overlord Shizu, 25 points for a triple alt swap. Ogre's Pride Shuna, who's on the banner for Maribel, she has a triple alt swap to blue for 15 points. We have other units with a 25 point alt swap. So there is a chance that this is an alt swap, which the team needs. If you're not running Ogre's Pride Shuna and you're running like Idol Shuna, like she's converting to greens, but this team isn't a green team, it's a blue team. So I could see this being an alt swap to blues, or I could see it being another barrier skill. Since she's so dependent on removing barrier stacks from everyone, that for her weakness strike, this 25 point skill could be a barrier for all of your allies on the front line. It would cost more because it's better than the Ritas character because she's free to play, and she's only giving it to one person. So that is going to be, I think, the difference right there. So Ritas is giving it to the lowest HP character. It costs 15 points, but it's only one stack to one person. If they want to make a premium summonable character do one stack to everyone at 25 points, I think that would work a lot better with her removal of barrier to give weakness strike. and it would synergize better with her kit. But also, still not enough to really warrant summoning. The barriers, as we've I think proven, like they can get destroyed quite easily, and then you're left with nothing. The fact that you can get one more stack on top of what Albus and Regis are doing, like yeah, sure, cool, fine, whatever. But like this beatdown battle against Trainee, on turn 5, she hits you 7 times. 7 times. And you have to have a 7-stack barrier, which is very hard to do in that fight. So I don't know about this, guys. EX alt damage we saw is not as impressive as you would like it to be. Weakness strike is one of the more less powerful buffs in the game, even at 150%. Like it'll bump your damage up for sure, but it's not the same as like 150% crit or 150% synergy or something like that, or 150% physical. It is much weaker than all of those different skills. And then depending on what the second skill is, she could go either way as being generic for a blue team or specific defensive unit that wants to buff herself, then help the team. It supports in different ways, realistically. But she is a support character. She's not a DPS at all. So, yeah, I just based on this skill alone and just this skill preview, she's not worth summoning for, especially if you don't have the meta already anyways. Continue to save your crystals. Keep your eyes peeled for maybe a potential special thing in December somewhere. I mean, it's the 1st now, so we have a lot of month left over. And then if not the New Year's team at the end of December. I mean, generally, historically, the New Year's teams have been pretty good. So maybe save for that. But don't spend your crystals on Maribel or this Momiji and Albus team. It's not worth it, I don't think. But let me know what you guys think. But that's it for me. Take it easy, and I will see you all in 11 and a half hours for 9 hours. 8.5 hours for the live stream.